Oh, cool.
That's a good job.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Hope you had a good lunch. Good. I know you're having a good time. I'm Phil Sandhouse. This is kind of a part two from our earlier discussion panel, kind of a DIY and how, which we got into not only artists and bands and songwriters, but some people who are pursuing a business career in radio and the music industry, kind of how you get started. The first part, we talked about really more of we got into the marketing and social and grassroots beginnings for bands and artists and songwriters. And even we talked about, because it came up and we addressed it, people pursuing a business career. How do you network and get started and grassroots yourself and promote yourself? This is going to be a kind of a part two in terms of how you try to get yourself beyond that point of once you get a buzz, once you get something going, once you're working from the bottom up, how do you get the professional gatekeepers in the industry? Now, this is primarily, we're going to address who's out here. For you artists, how do you get those gatekeepers that you still need to get their attention and get them to work with you, promote with you, be in business with you, be it agents, managers, music publishers, music supervisors, song pluggers, record labels, obviously, independents or majors. So we're going to kind of address what are maybe some of the threshold areas. Are most of you artists here, and that's why you're here?
Yeah.
Music artists?
Radio.
Radio also. I'm going to have everyone kind of introduce themselves so you get a perspective of who they are, their perspective of the career and business, and then we'll kind of jump in on some of this areas. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe McGrath. I'm an independent music producer, engineer. I've been a freelance producer for over 20 years. I've worked with artists from B.B. King to Green Day, Blink-182, AFI, Sum 41, so on and so forth. And I also forgot to mention the last time that I'm also an adjunct instructor of production and mixing at the SAE Institute in Hollywood.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
Wow, we're sorry that you haven't been able to work with any bands.
Yeah.
That Green Day sounds promising. Maybe they'll do something.
Yeah.
I'm Jim Nelson. I think it says here, oh, actually, no, it doesn't. I do middays at what I think is probably the single greatest radio station in the world, right here in Northridge. It's called KCSN. Obviously, I'm a little opinionated about that, but for the sake of this conversation, probably it would be better for you to know that I spent 11 years as a magazine editor, as the editor at the Album Network, which is a big industry radio trade publication. I spent about 20 years putting together music samplers that went out to hundreds of radio stations all over the country. And in one facet or another, for most of the last 20 plus years, a large element of my job has been to help musicians and artists, labels, managers, what have you, figure out how to get their music to radio and the way to get it on the radio. I've worked a lot with guys like Bob Catania here and Mike Gormley, who manages artists. So that's probably more important to what this conversation is about than the fact that I work at the radio station.
I had my intro here, Bob Catania. I did major label radio promotion for over 30 years, Island Records, Geffen Records, Charisma Records, I lose track of them all. 4 years ago, began my own promotion and marketing company, Right Way Music Group, and work with artists who are looking to get airplay on the radio these days. I work with small labels, management companies, entrepreneurs, people of that nature. So that's my business, and I will say, have worked with Jim for many, many years, and he's been a great champion of new artists and new music, and it's great to be on a panel with him.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Gormley. I have been at any one time a musician, a journalist, a record executive with Mercury Records and A&M Records, and then I started my own management company and managed bands and had the pleasure of managing bands from basically point zero to selling millions of records. And I still do management. We also do marketing at my company, mostly live event marketing. And I'm actually drifting into a new area, and that is a producer of documentaries, the first of which looks like will be it's a series of documentaries on record companies, starting with A&M Records, and which is where I came from, so that one's easy. But there's several others that we want to do. And that about sums it up.
My name is DJ Lenny Ducano. I've been DJing for 16 plus years. I work for 93.5 K-Day FM. I'm on tonight 2 to 4, so tune in. And I also do a Monday through Friday broadcast audio video with Be Real from Cypress Hill. And we started about 3 years ago. I jumped on 2 years ago. We're over 13 million views, and we have shows Monday through Friday, all day of the week. And I guess I'm here because I'm like, it's happening to me right now. These guys have completely made it, but I'm like in the middle of my transition of where I'm gonna go, and radio broadcast, DJing, and all that good stuff.
Right. I'm Phil Sandhouse. I've 30 plus years in the business, various different positions also, running artist development at record labels when major labels used to do artist development. Columbia Records, headed marketing at Columbia Records, managed David Bowie for 6-7 years for its music, film, and theater. Started a soundtrack label for Robert De Niro based on his Tribeca film production company called Tribeca Music, which is distributed by Sony Music. Then headed strategic marketing for Capitol Records for 6-7 years. From about 96 to 2000, all alternative ways of marketing and promotion and distribution of music content. Sort of a catalog there, and then went back into management with the Rolling Stones on the 40 Licks project, and done a lot of brand partnership, brand marketing, which has become a big part of the business the last year for artists to get their music out for various alternative outlets. Managing a young band right now, so we could speak to what I'm going through to get some of these people's attention. Pitch Jim, so I'm going through it. Yeah, it's true. And it's my background. So I think it'll be interesting because in a way you're more of an on the artistic side.
Yes, I'm definitely.
And every one of us have the orientation on the panel of either I'm pitching again or I had been pitched to. So, I think the conversation will be a little contextual in terms of some of what any of us, and I think we could go through the panel again, feel are certain thresholds when you get approached or you get pitched to, Mike, if someone wants to pitch you to manage an act, or Bob, what it takes besides, you could consultant that get paid, but what's the threshold for you to say, I want to take this project on, or to record, and whether you get paid or do something on a spec or back end or both, which is a lot of how artists are getting up and running nowadays, where they want to get an engineer, producer involved to get their music together so it's presentable, what that takes, and what's the threshold of making those decisions, and how are you pitching or people. So anyone who want to kind of get started, jump in on what?
Well, I'll start. I know this is part 2, and I don't know if everyone was here for part 1, but we talked about it in the previous panel. There are tremendous opportunities at the DIY level and things that can be done basically for no money. You can get your song on iTunes, and you can have Facebook and Twitter, and you can build a website, and you can create a platform for yourself, and that's really fantastic. And as we talked about before, that's the good news. The bad news is that everybody can do that. So the competitive landscape is more competitive than ever. What I just wanted to talk about at this point is, let's say that you are somebody who has built a tremendously successful DIY story, and you're ready to go to the next level. And I want to say this carefully so it doesn't come off the way it's going to sound, but at some point, when you do want to go to the next level, there is the business of the music business.
Can we drop back maybe a step before that? Because I think if you build a DIY to a successful level, people like us and other people will come knocking to your doors and will discover you. I think it's that step right before that. What will it take the threshold level to get your attention.
Right.
Uh,
Well, you know,
in a way.
people call me all the time with different projects at different levels.
A check will get his attention.
Yes,
Right.
the check is always a
I was gonna say,
we'll talk about that.
Unmarked bills, right. No, what has to be different, if you come to me and go, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on iTunes, well, so is everybody. So what is the story? What is something that's going to make that story resonate with the gatekeepers that you would presumably want me to help you achieve? So you have to be careful and determine, do you really have a story? Now, a lot of times in the conversations I have with potential clients, I'll just tell them, you don't have a story yet. And I think you have the ability with the internet these days to look at competitive situations. So people will call me up and they go, we have 3,000 friends on Facebook. It's like, well, that's great, but there's another band that might have 50,000 or 100,000. Or you come to me and say, my YouTube video's got 8,000 views, and I have a project right now that has 5.8 million views. And radio's response so far to that is like, oh, let us know when you have a real story. So you have to kind of keep in perspective what people do. And I think probably what you have to look at is some of the competitive situations and strive to have the best possible story. You know, whenever you think, okay, I've got it all together to go to that next level, you know, for me to call Jim and say, you should be playing this on your radio station, there's really got to be a significant story, which just means that DIY work's got to be long and intensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So is that like just good enough for you, just like an intriguing, credible story? You know, does it take more than that? Like if I just tell you like a amazing story right now, would you be interested in working with us based on my story?
You know, I have to look at a lot of different things. It would be, you know, what is the story? Obviously, my job is to promote to radio, so there has to be a quality of the music as well that I would say, I can call Jim and go, this is good enough to be on your radio station, you know, so that's a big part of it. The overall story has to be something significant and unique. There's a lot of different factors, you know, that play into it, you know. So this one project that has 5.8 million views, it's a European success story, which most American radio stations don't care about. But there's enough of a compelling story, and my belief in the music is strong enough to say, okay, this is a project that I would want to take on. And then they also have the proper financing, and not only to hire me, but the team of people that would be needed to work the project, you know, nationally. So I think you always want to look for what is something unique. You know, if somebody comes to me and goes, my song, you know, I went out there and hustled and my song's going to be in this commercial, or you know, we did a really different kind of video and it's got 100,000 views, but there's every comment is, this is the most groundbreaking thing ever. Those are the kind of things that I can say, because when I take on a project, I want to have a success for you. So I have to have something that I can go to the gatekeepers with and go, this is why this is different. So you have to look for something.
The story is a portion. You have to start with an amazing song. I mean,
Exactly.
Bottom line, nothing else matters if the song isn't amazing. But let me ask you a question. Everybody, show of hands. How many people out here have heard of an artist named Milo and a song AO Technology? Anybody? Anybody ever heard of it? A couple people have heard of it. Milo is from Belgium, but he lives here in LA now. And about 5 years ago, he put out a single called AO Technology. It was a cover of 50 Cent tune, I think. Some of you might know the song. That song to this, well, the last time I looked was over the summer, has 70 million YouTube views. And about 3 people in this room have ever even heard of it, let alone know it well. And he's not a big star, and yet that's an example of how you could have this amazing story and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. So it's got to be, the story has to be in there, but it can't be the only thing. So to answer your question more specifically, if you don't have an amazing song, performed really well, produced and engineered really well, with a great singer, lyrics that, you know, generally speaking, most people can relate to, the story's not going to matter. You have to start with that.
But just to add to that, see, 70 million views would get my attention, but then there'd be a lot of other questions.
Yeah.
Is the artist available? Can he get to a radio station if they're playing the record and they want him for a show? Is he performing? What else is going on? Has the 70 million views on YouTube translated to a sales story? So there's a lot of variables that go into that mix.
But just to put, and I think I want to address it with Mike, just to put a pin in this first point that we're making to your, in this way, and to what Jim is saying, is we maybe jumped ahead of the first step. The first step is having that great song or that great band together, that's compelling on record. And for me as a manager, if you want to get your first step of having a quarterback helping you with a project that none of us are probably going to make real money on for a year and a half, if that, or 2 years, if we do believe all collectively that you have the talent to make it in this business, the music's got to be done properly, correctly recorded. The live show equally has, that's what you're about, has got to be compelling enough to at least, then get the attention of at least the first step of someone helping you out, quarterback, Mike who's been a manager, myself, and I could go through the case history of this band, and Mike, I'm sure, has got a million of them. Get that first step and get it compelling enough to at least get someone helping you out who could then reach other people and bring a greater team together to work with you, whether they're paid, they're self-financed, they're financed through outside financing, or they're doing it on a commission basis. But that first step has got to be done properly and right. Mike, you want to kind of?
No, I was pointing to him because he had his hand up.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to ask, because I think some people are a little confused about the word story. So when you use the word story, you don't mean when I wrote this song, I was fasting.
No.
No, I'll give you an example of a story. It took place
Good
more.
question, though.
Yeah.
It took place more in Europe. But my company manages a young guy named Simon Linge. You've never heard of him because we haven't launched him in North America yet. We decided to launch him in Europe first, and the reason was because he was from Greenland, and Greenland is not a hotbed of music and artists and so on and so forth. His record was very, very good. In fact, he recorded it here in Los Angeles with Matt Forger producing, who engineered all the Michael Jackson records and so on. So it was international level. So we knew we had the music and we knew we had the personality. We signed him to an independent label out of London, and we got in the door because he was from Greenland. It was interesting enough for huge newspapers, morning television that seldom did music, had him on. He could back it up with the music, but his story that he was Inuit from Greenland, or half Inuit, was enough for people, particularly in the UK, Germany. Rolling Stone did a big story on him in Germany, and Scandinavians and certain countries reacted to the story. Then he could back it up with the music and with the live performance and so on and so forth, and ended up touring for 2 years over there. And now we're getting ready to launch him in North America. And so there's two examples of story there. One is he didn't have a story in North America. We didn't want to launch him here because we didn't have anything to say to anybody about him except he was great, which guys like this hear every day. Guys like this hear every hour.
Multiple times every day.
We wanted to create a story, so we decided we would go to Europe, where he had a little foothold because he'd grown up partially in Greenland, partially in Denmark. And then the story of Greenland. They wanted to call him, the PR people wanted to call him Eskimo, which I wouldn't allow. I just thought that was derogatory. But Inuit and from Greenland seemed to be okay, although the artist himself said, call me whatever you want, just get me on the show. And so his EPK now is just full of major exposure that we are now going to use to launch here. Now, radio won't care about the success he had there, but we'll get him, with all due respect, radio is now a major portion of what you do, but not the only thing you do. So we're going to launch him much more on the internet and not worry about radio right away. Although the plan certainly is there to go to radio. So that's an idea of how a story worked for us, and how lack of a story made us go somewhere else where we could make use of what he had to say and who he was.
Thank you.
Yep.
So just DJ Lenny right here.
Pardon?
We're talking to Lenny.
If you look at Forbes entertainers, DJs are among the top paid entertainers right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just put him on Fox.
I asked him for a
11
loan just before the pass.
I'm a producer at Fox 11 News, and I just put DJ Lenny's story on Fox because he just won Best.
Are you a plant?
No,
Jeez,
no, no, no.
yes.
No, I have a son here.
Yeah, I
who's
know.
Near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, sorry.
He just won a big DJ battle, beating out some amazing DJs, because I got to see everyone's performance. And he's been building his whole DIY repertoire, but what do you recommend to someone like him now, who's kind of built it, ingrained, has this underground street cred, and is starting to, like, you know,
Sounds like
level up?
sounds
what's
like
that next step?
sounds like press and publicity. You need a good publicist now to get your word out. I think you gotta either hire someone and really get the story told and get some media coverage.
The DIY way is do it yourself.
Well, yeah.
You know, I mean, you've got to
Yeah.
It's not quite. It used to be difficult to talk about yourself for an artist, DJ, musician, whatever it might be, to talk about themselves. It didn't come across as real because you were just bragging, sort of. Now it's perfectly fine on the internet, whatever, Facebook, whatever it might take. You can let people know what you're up to, but it's still better to have a third party saying, here's the award he won, and this is how great he is, and so on and so forth. It still does go a little farther. I mean, if you're a producer, you're probably getting hit on stories all the time, and there are certain PR people you'll pick up the phone for, and there are others
There's
who.
a handful that'll
Right.
do anything for
Right,
you.
Right.
exactly.
And the
That's
rest-
why my point. So it's between a traditional publicist for him and social media, and you can again, that's a DIY thing. Many artists are able to carve out the time and the other half of their brain to do that business side and do that social media side,
Yeah.
which is your own website, your Facebook page, your tweet, and a YouTube channel if you have visual to go up against your music. Now, honestly, my band are not inclined to do it. A lot of bands love, and a lot of artists, a lot of you guys are into it and way into it. My band can't stand it. They hate it. They love just creating music and playing music. They're really kind of old school, crazy that way. So I had to hire someone. We had to get a little bit of money up, and we'll go into case study because we could, and to do social media to do that.
Yeah, and I agree. I hate doing like,
Okay,
promoting.
you may have to spend a
just
little money
like,
to hire someone to
But-
help you
but
do
I
it.
do it.
But
I
part,
do
yeah,
it.
you
Do
do
it,
it because
okay.
part of the thing on social media is they don't want to hear, and they know when it's a third
Oh,
party.
yeah, absolutely.
They know when it's not the artist.
No,
They
no.
want and they don't like it. They want to hear
Well,
from you.
they're not speaking for my artists. They're facilitating at least the mechanics of getting it all done and
But-
getting a schedule together for them
And-
and helping them out. But they're the ones going on and
Any
doing it
artist I
themselves.
work with,
Yes.
I say you get on Facebook, Twitter, even LinkedIn and things like
Yep,
that,
yep.
and you have to do it several times a week. You can't do it obnoxiously.
Yep.
You can't do it about your pet poodle. You know, you talk intelligently,
Yep.
but you're in people's face because people want to hear from you and they want to comment on what's going on.
Right.
They do, and which is why I do like a Monday through Friday broadcast, and every day video. People get to talk to us and engage in full on
Cool.
contact with us. And going back to your point about the story and his artist, it's all about like when he recorded with Michael Jackson's engineer. How did he get that connection? You know, and back to you, you gotta get like find out what producers are hot, buy a beat from them, make friends with like an artist, hang out with them at their studio, and have them like co-sign you, like push the way for you. Be a part. Find a team that you want to be a part of. A team has been the most important thing for me. Without that, and there's a lot of time involved, a lot of money, or if you want to hire PR people, but it's a lot of self-time, and it's when preparation meets opportunity, you know,
That's true.
and you have to
And-
just
and
be
put-
ready.
And putting yourself out there, and being present, and that's the work part of it, which is fun. And I could speak to a couple of things that I'm going through with this band, and not because it's my band, but I'm touching on a lot of these things, I was out at Hotel Cafe at an industry event. I was invited to the Guitar Center through. I ran into a publicist I vaguely knew. She said, we caught up. she said, yeah, you know, I got hired to help out this little band from Sierra Madre, and they're looking for a manager. I said, okay, and I liked her taste. So she sent me, it was a finished CD. The dad had put a little money into the project to help out, and they were smart enough, they got it remixed by Brian Karlstrom, who did a lot of work with Alice in Chains and The Offspring. And I heard the record, and I said, this is something I like. I thought had potential as a first record. And then I saw the band live. They were compelling. And then there was a story. There are 3 brothers, all under 20. They play great. I like the sound. It was right in the pocket a little bit now of Jack White and the Black Keys. And I saw, based on my experience, I saw a career ahead of me with them. And it may be on this track, it may be on the record, but it may be on the next record. But I believe there's a career. And I committed to them. Then I started doing my thing, what do we need to do? So we got the online presence together. The publicist was still working and starting to get some coverage with the blogs. Immediately, it's the first step, so we started servicing. And this is not a ton of money stuff. This is just coordination and putting the work and the effort in. I do, and then they took advantage of my area's expertise of looking for brand partnerships, or talking about maybe there's a radio strategy or not with a Bob, and I met Jim. I met Jim and I networked with him. I met him at the last conference, so I sent him the music to say, will you consider it? Play it, So I'm doing that the same way that you guys do that on your own, and build through the food chain and build a team of believers.
Yeah. And a good way to build through the food chain is to use one thing to get to another.
Exactly.
Get on with the team and then approach a higher team level and say, hey, I'm doing this, can I hang with you guys? And as soon as you do that, you take it to somewhere else and you go, hey, I'm doing this, can I get on the radio?
Right.
And then after that, directly somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just keep using where you are to get to the next place.
We had a little bit of money. We invested in a video because we felt the band played great, they looked great, the song was good. And I said, okay, we got a video. We're gonna. The only 2 places for this kind of band, this really is MTV2 and MTVU right now. I hired with a little bit of money an O-line, video promotion guy. We got lucky. We got the video on, and it's now still in recurrent airplay. And then MTV said, you know what? We hit a nerve. We had a story to tell about this band. Rock is not a prevalent genre, but MTV, ironically, in the MTV2 and U level, are looking to help break more rock bands. And so they embraced what we were doing and what we were about. Then the licensing department at MTV heard about this band because of that, and they said, MTV has a priority licensing program where they'll enter into arrangement with an artist if they like what their sound is and feel their sound is right for the scripted television shows on the MTV networks. They'll do a gratis license, meaning you'll give your music to them for free, but you'll get tons of exposure on some of their shows. So we're now part of that program. So to that point, you build on your story, you increase your story, you build on the connections, and you try to take it then to the next step.
Actually, this is a good time to piggyback on that. You had a question. Was it about this?
Yeah, a little bit. Because I work on the radio side, so I have a college.
You're next.
So how important is it for you, who are managers or who have labels, to push to college stations? Because I know for us, because we're looking for the newest and the next best thing on an independent level. So it's sometimes difficult for us to always, single-handedly reach out to every single independent artist that we find. But I know there's a lot of music services out there like DigiWax or greenhits.com where you can download stuff that the labels are pushing out, but how do we position ourselves with someone?
Okay, I just want to preface contextually in history, then I want the experts to address it, because when I grew up in the business and my, college, this is where we started great new music, okay? Now college is, really the bastard child, and, the arrogance of the industry doesn't feel like college can help break. But I'm one who's still old school and believe that if you're going to break someone who's going to make a difference and have a long-term career, and I don't care what genre you're talking about, do it in a place, and you still need people who are open-minded or going to embrace new sounds, new styles, and be fans and be with you for the next 5-10 years. That's my opinion, but I want to hear from the experts who promote and a manager who still is managing. So go ahead.
Before I answer, we need to get to her question after this, okay? She's been trying. Okay?
Oh, I didn't see your hand.
After we
go ahead.
Listen, I did college radio back in the day. We were actually FM. I'm not that old. I was very active with college radio promotion in my first job at Island Records, and it was a great foundation for artists. There was a lot of things that got a lot of play at college radio that were still 2 to 3 years away from the next level. So it was kind of the farm system.
Yeah, sure.
And it was really, it's funny, the guy that I had doing college radio promotion way back when is now a very successful modern rock independent, makes lots of money. So it was a good foundation for him as well. So I think it's really crucial to do that. The one problem we have as an industry with college radio, and I'm not as close to it as I used to be, it's sometimes hard for labels to quantify the effect of that airplay.
Right.
So, it's hard to say, well, we have this amount of college radio stations and we're selling this amount of records. So it's kind of it's just a logistic problem that I think it has, and a lot of people
They don't appreciate the nuance of that these are, you guys at college are tastemakers, you guys are influencers, it's a numbers game. That's the problem where the industry has gone. So they're not going to pay as much attention. So I'm still believe, and Jim, you being as probably close to being college, and please address it. And then Mike, I want to hear what you think about your interest in having your guy eventually coming in from, I don't know his sound per se, but getting on college radio. So, but Jim, go ahead.
I would say, first and foremost, if you've got an artist and you want to get exposure, then you should probably approach anywhere and everywhere that you can think of that might make sense. And call it. The thing is, though, you have to know ahead of time, does the music that my artist makes fit that radio format? So
Right.
know that it fits before you bother, because otherwise you're wasting your time and other people's time. So that's important. And piggybacking on some things that Phil said a moment ago, and your question fits, I've talked to a lot of brand new artists, independent singer-songwriters or bands, and they want to know, how do I get my song on the radio? And eventually, the conversation will come up about people like Bob Catania and what he does. And I've had a lot of artists say, do I really need to hire somebody to work my song to radio? Because I know a guy who hired somebody and paid all this money and
Nothing
they didn't get
happened.
anything on the radio. It's not that guy's fault. The radio is not going to play your song if it's not amazing. So hiring somebody like Bob and then blaming him for not getting on the radio is that there's a total disconnect there. The bottom line is, can you work your song to radio without hiring a guy like Bob? He doesn't want to hear this, but you could if you want to spend a lot of time and get nowhere. If that's what your goal is, then you got it. If you hire a guy like Bob, is it cheap and inexpensive? Can you reach in your pocket and pull out your change and say, here, Bob? No, it's not the way it works. What are you paying for? Years and years of relationships. And I'm not promoting Bob so much. I'm putting him on the spot here, but I'm answering the question that I'm sure a lot of you
hire him as my agent.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, because I hear it all the time from brand new artists. You need some money. There's no way to do this right without some money.
Right.
And I can't tell you what that amount is, but it's
Right.
not $100. It's in the thousands of dollars.
And we could speak to that in a minute of, friends, family, independent financing, Kickstarter, which has, gone through the roof, and a couple
Pledge
other
Music,
programs
yeah.
like that everyone's using. So that starts with. Mike, do you want to talk about college radio and your perspective nowadays? And if this is your ours, what would you do? And
Well, I don't do radio promotion per se, but
as a manager, your perspective of yeah.
like Jim said, if someone wants to play my artist's record, great.
Absolutely, exactly.
I'm not going to worry about where or when or how or whatever. I'm just going to make use of it as a starting point, if that's where it is, or a continuing situation. So college radio, I find now, is so diverse, playing so many different types of music, that it's almost like airplay on NPR. You might hear it by chance once, you know, but it's just not the kind of airplay that used to break artists was the kind of airplay that, and in fact, there was a survey, which is now probably about 20 years old, that a person had to hear a song 39 times before they got who the artist was. You know, they made that connection. They had to hear it 39 times before they recognized the song as so-and-so singing it. So college radio doesn't provide that kind of impact. What is good about college radio, there's lots good about college radio, but with what I like is if they're playing the record or interested in an artist, I like to get the artist on a show doing an interview, and particularly if there's a show coming up in town or something like that, promotionally it can be great, and that's how I look at college radio is I want you to play the record, but I'd like you to have the artists on the air when they come to town.
Or and tour through college. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and it's funny because, and then maybe Bob could address that a little bit, that because of this diversity at college right now, when a manager or even labels or indie labels, I think, look towards a radio promotion plan, the kind of clumping together non-com and college right now as either one bridging the gap to stepping one to the next. Am I correct? It's kind of
the problem I have with certain clients is they have a certain expectation level that they want to see X, Y, and Z from that, and sometimes college radio or non-com is not going to provide that
non-commercial
feedback.
Radio.
Non-commercial radio.
Right.
So somebody may say, if I give you X amount of dollars, I expect to see X amount of airplay and X amount of sales off of that. And I have to say to them, well, these two areas are not going to provide that information to me or that result that you want. Therefore, you can do it, but you have to understand that I'm not going to be able to give you the answer that you may want.
Yeah, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees. You could hire a team of Bob Catanias and spend $1 million and still not get the radio airplay that you're expecting.
Because guys like him will say no.
Guys like me won't even listen to it.
Exactly.
And that's why college radio is so important.
Exactly.
It's for you to showcase these new artists. A bunch of A&Rs from labels you could contact. DJs, we always get hit up for new artists, play my record. But the problem is technology. Songs come out today, they won't get played on the radio till 2 days. But before, it used to be like you would go to a club and a DJ would break that record because the artist walked up to the DJ and said, "Can you play this tonight?"
And if the reaction was there?
Yeah, that doesn't happen because now with all these radio and technologies, radios play the same thing over and over, and it's the thing that makes the station money. So it's really important for you in the college year to play new artists.
Absolutely.
It helps the local scene, it helps everyone, and you're the only one doing it.
I have a one point for
and
you.
And non-commercial.
I have a point for you that's a little bit of a different take, and I would suggest anyone here who's in radio and in college radio, if you're playing something that you really love and you feel like there's some reaction to it, pick up the phone and call that label and let them know what's going on. And it may sound weird, but you know John Sigler, right?
Oh, yeah.
I had a guy, this is back when I started out in the business, this guy used to call me from a Santa Fe college station and go, "Bob, this is John. All right, I'm going to tell you which of your records are doing really well on my radio station." And he was telling me about Eurythmics and Bow Wow Wow and all these groups. And eventually he graduated college, and they called, my boss came in one day and said, "We need to get some kid to do college radio promotion." And I said, "This kid that used to drive me crazy and gave me great feedback, he's a senior vice president in a promotion in Nashville right now. He's had a, but because he picked up the telephone and called me, and every week I'd go, all right, here's this kid again, and I was always polite to him, but that's where, in my mind, his feedback, him picking up the phone and going, but not every record, but just like, there's something really unique going on with this, got my attention." So
to this point is about on the business side, which you're kind of in, of radio, and maybe that's where you want to have a career going, is that to not only you're doing your job and picking great quality music that you want to expose, that you believe in are going to be the artists and careers of the future, but this is the other side of the business and why I don't work in that industry anymore, because I always like to listen and hear what the consumer wants and what it's about. And the arrogance of the record industry was just dictating most of the time. But to Bob's point is that we used to, in the early days, there used to be more of that back and forth and that acknowledgement, whether it was great local alternative stations or great college stations, and talk about, hey, we got great fan reaction, and we're listening to fans. We're going to bring the band in to do an interview. We're going to bring the band in to do a date on the campus or in this secondary market, but it's a college market. So we started to break bands regionally. So listen to your listener, execute on it in a business fashion, call the label, call a local publicist, a local newspaper, and say, hey, you should get into this band too. And that's how you're going to build a greater knowledge of what the music business is
and
about.
the local record store, if there is one.
If there are any more left. Yeah, local
Make
record
sure
store
they know
used to be
too.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we
Go
get her
ahead.
question?
Yes, now, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that something I find sort of discouraging about the difference between sort of the way the music industry stands today and the way it used to stand is that there used to actually be A&R representatives back in the day. And I feel like sort of the music industry isn't making any attempts to actually seek talent anymore. It's more like, instead of the music industry talking to artists and saying, what can we do for you, it's the other way around, what can you do for us, which obviously is very important, but I mean, how do you know that you're getting quality artists, and, you know, how, are you, you know, do you feel limited when you say, you know what, you gotta pay me before we even think about anything?
Well, I'll just address that, because, keep in mind, A&R is different than from what I do with promotion, okay?
Right.
There was just a study out that the increase in A&R spending in the past couple years has been astronomical. And I'll tell you why. Because for about 10 years, it went away.
It got gutted.
And what happened was labels were letting artist development happen at the artist level. Guys like myself, I mean, I've had projects that I've worked for little labels that got picked up by Universal Republic or somebody else, where we did all the work, and then the label came in and
Stepped in later
wow,
on, yeah.
they're selling 20,000 a week. Well, it's a good bet. And then they had people. A&R became 5 guys sitting in an office looking at YouTube videos all day. And I think there is no question that the parallel of the demise of the industry was a parallel to the demise of A&R. You're absolutely right. I saw it in offices I worked in. There used to be 4 A&R people, and then there was 1. And I would go to shows, and I go to showcases, and I go, 3 people should be rushing the stage to sign this band. So you're right, it has happened, but I do think the labels have finally figured out. They've bottomed, and they've got to invest in talent. You can have the greatest promotion, marketing managers. If there's no talent, it's all a waste.
I actually spoke with an A&R guy yesterday, which is the first time I've done so in a long, long time.
At a major label?
Yeah,
okay.
A majorly funded label.
Yeah. Okay,
and with major distribution.
Okay.
And he actually wants to have a meeting, and I hung up the phone. I went, wow, that's like 20 years ago.
Exactly. But this is what we're talking about. Is what has happened coming out of the last 10, 15 years has been the corporatization of the record industry, and it was dictated by a numbers game. So it was dictated by the massive sellers that they construct, and they roll the dice on $1, $2, $3 million rollouts of a Lady Gaga or a Katy Perry, and I have got nothing against those. But back in the day when I worked for a major label, those types of artists would bankroll Breaking and Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe and Rock Power and Boomtown Rats and Psychedelic Furs and my alternative bands back then. But so what happened was the industry got gutted that way and got dictated by those numbers games. But what has happened in a good way is you see a rise of independence and independent record labels across the genres, whether it's hip hop or Merge or Arcade Fire coming, and you see now the career artists coming out of the independent scene. They would have not happened in the major labels over the last 5 or 10 years. Arcade Fire would never happen in a major label. I'm sorry, and Mumford and Sons, and even so that's happening through a great thriving independent scene
by the way,
now.
Adele and Gautier are not Columbia and Universal Republic artists. Those are independent labels.
XXL out of London was Adele, got upstreamed.
And upstreamed, and they got licensed. So the artists, the A&R happened elsewhere. Those companies were just smart enough to pick them up. But there's more of those happening now out of necessity than ever before.
Right.
Well, what I think is interesting about that, and he and I were talking a little bit about this. I have a friend who has an independent label, and it's done very well. And their philosophy is they only want you if you're already doing everything yourself. Back to the DIY.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you literally are the band that is out there already touring the world.
That's not new, though.
Yeah,
That's not new.
Yeah.
I mean, I managed a band in the 90s, 80s, and 90s called the Bangles, and I signed them when they didn't have a name or a bass player, and we put out our own records on a little Faulty Products label. It was called Faulty Products, and we did all of that back in 82, 83. We did all that, and then we got to a point where Columbia Records started sniffing around.
Right.
And by the time we did the deal with Columbia Records, we'd done 2 national tours and all kinds of national TV. And that, man, it cost a whole lot more to sign them than it had a couple of years before.
So interesting. It seems like is there less artist development and more of an expectation now to already kind of bring as complete a package to the table as you can?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, they talk about now they talk about managers being more powerful because it's the managers who are developing the artists and signing new artists and creating their career and so on.
Quarterbacking a team and bringing
Right.
the elements that the labels used to do.
Yeah.
I'm hiring
Speaking of the
outsourced.
Bangles,
Yeah.
my friend James Levesque, who was the bassist in Agent Orange, just sent me a teen band from Orange County, 2 girls, sounds just like that. It's adorable.
Hope they sound better than the Bangles do now.
Yeah, I just saw Susanna a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Go ahead.
Real quick, and I'm about to open up a huge can of worms, but I'm just going to say it because everyone in this room needs to know it. We're on some level sort of bemoaning the loss of A&R and the loss of artist development at record labels, and there certainly are a lot of factors for it, but probably the single biggest factor for it is that so many people do not buy music anymore. They trade MP3s with their friends as though that's okay. It's just a file in my computer. I'll send it to my buddy. He sends it to all of his friends. Guess what, folks? Every time you do that, that's money that's not getting into the industry, which means the artists themselves are suffering. So the artists that you love, when you share your files without people buying them, that artist is suffering. The industry itself suffers in the trickle-up theory, if that makes any sense. And we lose things like A&R. We lose things like artist development. And then in a bigger picture, because it all is intertwined, it affects other things, and you see things like the radio industry downsizing because there isn't as much money coming into radio from the music business. It's not the only reason that radio's downsizing, but it's part of it. So keep that in mind. It's a generation where people don't buy records, and I know most of you look young enough where that's been all you've known, but you have to understand there's a negative fallout to that, and what I just described is a small portion of that negative fallout.
Yeah, but this downward pressure is very interesting, you're saying, because where the bar used to be, where I was at one of the 2 major labels, and we did do artist development, we did do all these components, and then it was relegated to the indies of the day that where we talk about in A&M Records, who used to do that. Now if I'm out there with my new band Canto, I'm talking to independent labels out in Colorado and secondary and tertiary markets, and they're saying, I'm not going to sign you unless you could do 200 and 250 dates a year, unless you got X number of Facebook, likes. They're expecting. That's where the downward pressure of the industry has gone, where either these indie regional labels have the bar up there in terms of if they would sign you or not. So that's where I'm, as a manager, I'm outsourcing publicity, online marketing, social media, some video promotion, and I'm giving some music away. I'm selling some music. I'm trying to build a merchandising base. I'm trying to build a touring base. I'm trying to build a licensing base of music for film, TV, advertising. And I'm trying to build that holistic and develop it myself. And eventually, I won't be able to do it all. We can't finance it all, but we'll get up to a point where hopefully a major will sniff for a lot more money. Still, same cycle. Any other questions? Go ahead. Yeah.
We were talking about having the whole package together, the story and everything, and just what it takes to get you guys to notice somebody. And so what I'm hearing is like my question is basically, somebody who has the story, they have the amazing song, would you guys be willing to work with them if they don't have like the following and the views and the numbers like the show and stuff, but they have everything else except that?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
But rarely.
It's not.
You got it.
It's not.
Yeah.
Not out of the question.
Right.
But the guy I was talking about earlier that we worked in Europe and now we're bringing him over here. I met him at a little singer-songwriter night on Highland, at a place called Highland Grounds, here in LA about 7 years ago. I mean, he had Zippo going for him, but he was a great songwriter. And then we got together with Matt Forger, and he said he'd produce the record, and that got it going. And Matt produced the record for free, not for free, but on spec, as they call it. He eventually got paid, but so yeah, you know, you got to just keep moving forward, and somebody's going to say yes at some point, whether it's management or a radio guy, whatever it might be. If you've got the goods, somebody's going to say yes. It's just perseverance is the biggest talent you can have.
Right.
It's so. Yeah, it can happen. It's better to have a story, or I mean, it's better to have even find a following somehow, some way. Call a guy like this. Call other radio stations. Just do it, or online. Keep building it while you're looking around for guys, but don't depend on guys. Depend on yourself.
Yeah.
And then all those guys can help out, but you're the engine. If you don't do it, nothing else is going to happen.
Well, I think everyone up here, every one of us, the song, I mean, that's it right there. Everything else is like just dressing, but it's the song. And but the problem is, I think in a lot of ways, is a lot of independent artists sort of don't recognize whether they have a great song or not. So they play it for all their friends, and guess what? Your friends are going to tell you what you want to hear because they're your friends. So you're not going to really get good feedback that way. You should still play it for them, and it's great to hear your friends say, "Oh man, that's awesome." But the bottom line is,
as long as that's what your friends say.
yeah. Man, you suck. No, what? Wait, you're my friend. But the bottom line is, if it's a great song, seriously a great song, you probably could get all of our attention with it. If it's got that intangible that makes us want to listen over and over and over again, yeah. But you got to start with that. You have to.
All right, guys, we're going to have to wrap it up. I hope this was helpful for you guys and some information. Thank you.